Literally name one thing your country does that Japan can't do better.
People like you fatigue me. And that's because you hold Japan to a very high standard, you put Japan on this very high pedestal, leaving very little room for criticism, making it seem like the rest of the world is just struggling to keep up. You can only see as much of Japan as they're willing to show you. This is the surface level. This is how much of Japan you can see based on the media alone. This is how much you'll see if you actually visit or come and live here. Based on intersectionality, how much privilege you have, you might see more, you might see less. And those are the negatives. Those aren't the cons. Those are not the cons. That is when you get a deeper understanding of Japan. When you start to learn Japanese and you start to dive into Japanese history, you start to study Japanese traditions and customs, you start to listen or read the Japanese news, you look into laws, this is how much more of Japan you can see. Your eyes should be opening the more you learn. They should not be closing. You should not be ignorant. The more of Japan you find out about, you should be upset. The more of any country you find out about, you should be upset because this is what you can see and you should be constantly learning. This is the mountain of negativity that Japan is not showing you, but it's not on the surface. It's below. You can't see this unless you make conscious efforts. What ends up happening when you romanticize a country is that you start to invalidate all of the struggles of the people who actually live there, who are fighting for their rights. You start to invalidate Japanese women who are trying to close the gender pay gap. You start to invalidate their fight for equality because there are laws in place that ensure that Japanese women don't have the same rights as Japanese men. Start to invalidate natives, not Japanese people, natives who are here first, who are fighting for their history not to get erased, like Okinawa. Start to invalidate Japanese men who are force-fed the patriarchy and encouraged to believe that feminism is a terrible movement, when in real fact, they don't want to be bachelor dads either. They don't want to have such a high suicide rate due to pressure of being a hard-working man who doesn't complain and has no feelings. You start to invalidate dark-skinned Japanese people who are fighting colorism to be recognized as Japanese despite not fitting the beauty standard. You start to invalidate Zainichi Kankokujin and other mixed Japanese people who are proud of their identity, but they're told they're not Japanese enough. You start to invalidate Japanese minors who don't want the age of consent to be under 16 in many prefectures, who don't want their school uniform sexualized, which leads to pedophilia, as well as they turn into prey for disgusting people. Specifically men. I'm going to say it, specifically men. You invalidate foreigners who are married to Japanese people or who have their own lives here long term, who are trying to improve the quality of life and gain basic human respect. Stop it.